It seems like the most natural thing in the world to get frustrated, angry, or even outright jaded about things we have a deep-rooted sense could, and indeed probably should, be otherwise. But is it the case that coming at reality from this paradigm is both wasteful of one's energies and futile? It is in this spirit that Stephen Covey, author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, writes, "We must look at the lens through which we see the world, as well as the world we see," stating that the lens itself shapes how we interpret the world. What Covey is advocating for is a paradigm shift, a notion attributable to the philosopher of science Thomas Kuhn. In Covey's words, paradigms are powerful because they create the lens through which we see the world. The power of a paradigm shift is the essential power of quantum change, whether that change is an instantaneous or a slow and deliberate process. Stephen Covey was born in 1932 and died in 2012. He was an American educator, author, and businessman who is better known for his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Covey was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, and graduated from the University of Utah. He later received a doctorate from Brigham Young University. He worked as a professor, consultant, and executive before becoming a full-time writer and speaker. Imagine you are stood at the center of multiple concentric circles, spanning ever outwards from the position in which you stand. Around you are all the things that concern you. They are placed at varying distances from you, even spanning to the outer reaches. Those most immediately at hand, towards the center of the circle in which you stand, are those things that are under your direct influence and control. These things are those concerns that pertain to you personally, a domain in which you have the power to effect real and meaningful change, though the object of that change is most often going to be yourself. Here, only personal growth can realistically happen. Moving ever outwards, we encounter those issues that we can meaningfully influence, albeit more indirectly and with the necessity for tact. As you survey the outer reaches, you begin to encounter issues over which you have little and then eventually no influence. These might be issues dealt with higher up the chain of command in your place of work, passing eventually through regional, national, and even global concerns. Any one of these issues has the potential to become an object of frustration as you haphazardly grapple to exert control over something which is simply beyond any meaningful control you could possibly bring to bear. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. The Serenity Prayer is a prayer attributed to the American theologian Reinhold Niebuhr. However, it is thought that Winifred Crane Weigel wrote an earlier version in much the same vein. Nevertheless, the overarching message is that it is unwise to concern oneself with those issues one has no ability to change or alter. In his book, Covey explains that individuals have 2 circles that define their sphere of influence: the circle of concern and the circle of influence. The circle of concern includes everything that individuals are worried or concerned about, including global issues, national events, and personal problems. The circle of influence, on the other hand, includes those things that individuals have the power to change or influence, such as their own behaviors, attitudes, and relationships. It's important to mention that so much motivational content has been inspired by this powerful lens through which one can examine his or her own reality, that the concept has evolved and expanded as a result. Therefore, it is possible to find this concept described both in terms of a circle or a sphere of influence or concern, though they essentially point to the same idea. The concept also tends to get expanded to describe 3 circles or spheres. These are those of control at the center, influence moving outward, and concern on the outer reaches. Although Covey doesn't use this expanded nomenclature explicitly, he does, however, state that the problems we face fall into one of 3 areas: direct control, problems involving our own behavior; indirect control, problems involving other people's behavior; or no control, problems we can do nothing about, such as our past or situational realities. Therefore, it may be useful to picture yourself in your mind's eye standing in the center of 3 overlapping circles of different sizes. At bottom, the larger circle encompasses all the issues about which you are concerned, some of which you can control directly, others you can only seek to influence, and those over which you have no control. The next smallest circle overlaps the first, but only encompasses those issues that we can control, either directly or through influence. Finally, the smallest circle, the one on which you stand, represents only the issues over which you have direct control. The following quotation summarizes Covey's approach succinctly. Whether a problem is direct, indirect, or no control, we have in our hands the first step to the solution. Changing our habits, changing our methods of influence, and changing the way we see our no control problems are all within our circle of influence. According to Covey, direct control problems are essentially controlled by working on our own habits and are within our circle of influence. By comparison, indirect control problems may be solved through changing the methods by which we seek to influence. To hammer the point home, it should go without saying that so-called no control problems are just that, and need not be dealt with, since they can only be confronted in any real sense through one's own frustration and anguish. At the heart of these concepts is the idea that we need to focus our attention and effort on the things that we can control, and let go of the things that we cannot. This requires a shift in mindset from a reactive one, where we are constantly at the mercy of external forces, to a proactive one, where we take responsibility for our own lives and make deliberate choices about how we want to live. Covey likes to quote Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist, psychiatrist, and Holocaust survivor, who is best known for his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl is famous for a key insight that came to him while he was interned in a Nazi concentration camp. Even under the most unthinkable and brutal of conditions, he realized the importance of freedom that exists between stimulus and response. He is quoted as having said, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." All this is to say that personal growth happens when one focuses solely on what he or she can change, and that is his or her response to a given situation or stimulus. Covey reflects similarly, urging us to focus on the etymology of the word responsibility, rendering it as response-ability, or the ability to choose one's response to a given set of circumstances. Inevitably, since frustration is a natural human emotion, this requires a degree of courage. It requires, as Covey says, that one subordinate feelings to values. This shift in mindset is fundamental to living a fulfilling and peaceful life. When we focus on the things that we can control, we become less reactive and more intentional about our actions. We start to feel more in control of our lives, which in turn leads to greater fulfillment and a sense of purpose. Moreover, by focusing on these areas, we are able to develop our character, skills, and knowledge, which can contribute to our personal growth and self-improvement. We become more confident and empowered, which can lead to greater peace of mind and a sense of calm. At the same time, by recognizing what we can influence, we are able to extend our impact beyond our immediate circle of control. We can use our influence to inspire and motivate others, to create positive change in our communities, and to make a meaningful contribution to the world around us. This sense of purpose and connection to something larger than ourselves can be deeply fulfilling. In addition, moving through life with this attitude can help us to develop empathy and compassion for others. When we recognize that there are things we cannot control, we become more accepting of the impermanence and unpredictability of life. We are less likely to judge and criticize others for things that are beyond their control, and more likely to extend kindness and understanding to them. Taken as a whole, all of this smacks of Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson's in treatment that one ought not seek to exert influence on the wider world until he or she has first tidied his or her own room. This metaphor for a proactive focus and an inside-out approach to change first and foremost describes exactly that powerful paradigm shift that Covey advocates for. As Covey demonstrates, a reactive, outside-in focus shrinks one's circle of influence, while, by contrast, an inside-out, proactive focus can only expand it. As Covey says, there are things, like the weather, that our circle of influence will never include. But as proactive people, we can carry our own physical and social weather with us. We can be happy and accept those things that at present we can't control, while we focus our efforts on the things we can. The concepts of control, influence, and concern have deep philosophical implications for how we live our lives. By focusing on the things that we can control, developing our character and skills, and using our influence to make a positive difference, we can lead a more fulfilling and peaceful life. This requires the aforementioned shift in mindset from a reactive, complaining, outside-in one to a proactive, accepting, inside-out one, where we take responsibility for our own lives and make deliberate choices about how we want to live. It may seem to be something of a paradox, but by courageously embracing the notion that there are things we may never be able to change with a certain sense of humility, we find freedom in that space between stimulus and response, where those things we can change lie.